Okay, this is a recorded interview for Organic News on Awake Radio to be played in just about 2 hours from now. I have Linda Tirado, who is actually in an airport on your way to Minneapolis, who wrote a book called Hand to Mouth, Living in Bootstrap America. Thank you for joining me for about 20 minutes that you have while you're waiting for your flight. So talk about the book that you wrote, and living, you were living in poverty yourself, is that right?
Yeah, I was actually working at an IHOP, and I was working part-time for a disability rights center. I was going to school full-time. I came home from work, and some people had asked online, why is it that I see poor people in iPhones? And I had an answer, so I wrote it, and the answer went viral, and then they let me write a book about what it's like to be working class in America, which is actually pretty great.
Can you repeat that? What was it about poor people and iPhones?
Yeah, somebody told me that they went to a grocery store and they saw people with an iPhone and a food stamp card, and they were being really judgmental. And I said, you're not allowed to judge because you don't have any idea what that person's life is like. And that actually went super viral. About 12 million people read it, and then they let me write a book, and now I do things like radio from an airport.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. And so, like, what was the reception of your book?
It was honestly just answering things that people say, like, well, why aren't you living more healthfully? Why aren't you perfect? Why do you sometimes feel the need to get entertainment? Why do you feel like you're allowed to do things like have sex with people without, making sure that nothing ever can come of it? Why do you feel like you get to be human too? So my book was, well, see, we're human just like the rest of you. I've never met a wealthy person who went to a high-end rehab place that wasn't an addict of the same drugs that you see on the street. So when we're going to punish vice, does that come down to class? Is it different if you're getting drunk off of malt liquor, if you're drinking Mickey's with your friends, or if you're drinking a fine bottle of Bordeaux? Because you're just as drunk with your friends either way. How nice your glasses are actually doesn't make a moral difference.
I always wonder, why doesn't anybody judge the powers that be for being completely intoxicated and addicted to power and money?
And that's a real good question, too, because the thing that we've said is that there's a moral problem with people deciding that money isn't the most important thing in their lives. If you're not out there chasing that college degree and that CEO profession, well, if you're not having a great life, the problem is you. But the question that we have to ask is, who's going to scrub the toilets once everybody's got an engineering degree? And if somebody still has to scrub the toilets, no matter how many engineers we have, don't we have a moral obligation as a nation to make those jobs and to make those people's lives actually livable? Where does it say that simply because the job that you have doesn't maximize shareholder profits, you're doing less for the economy, or more importantly, for the entire society, than the guy who sits around thinking all day trying to create money where there wasn't money before?
What you just described reminds me of the reason why they broke the family system up, and the reason why housework was not considered to be valuable. Like, the husband was valuable because he was out bringing home the bacon, and the wife was just home doing the laundry and the cooking that needs to be done. I mean, it's valuable work that is important and needs to be done. And so they broke the family up because of that, and made people have to go out to clean toilets and get paid to clean toilets, and then they're still devaluing you for that.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. There is no point in this society where we're not going to need an underclass, where we're not going to need a service industry. So we as a society have to decide, do we want to point at those people and call them subpar, or do we want to thank them for doing the jobs that we really don't want to do? Because you hear that rhetoric frequently as immigrants. They're doing the jobs we don't want to do. Well, honey, ain't nobody wants to work at a Burger King, but damned if the entire country doesn't shut down if there ain't people to feed the people that don't have time to cook because they're too busy maximizing shareholder profit.
And another question I have is, why do we have to look down on people at all? I mean,
because otherwise we don't feel good about ourselves.
So that's
if what you do for a living consists of making things where there was none before, if what you do is design complex financial instruments, and that's the sum total of your life, that's the only value you're giving to society, well, honey, you got to look down on somebody.
See, that's what I'm saying. So again, like what I hear you describing is the same thing an addict suffers from. So, so you feel good about yourself when you trample on a certain amount of people, but then when that wears off, you need more people to trample on to feel even better about yourself. And then you need to
Well, and unfortunately, this is just human nature, right? Like, there's never, I mean, it's even in the Bible, the poor you will always have with you, right? And it's gone down forever and ever. We lived in feudalism. People had serfs. We came to America. We gave slavery. Even now, we're fighting for the working classes. We're fighting for reasonable wages. We're fighting for something like a sense that everybody that's a citizen of America has an equal societal value, and you're still going to find racism in that. So, every group of people has a group that they look down on to make themselves feel better. That's human nature. Fortunately for us, the point of humanity is to transcend human nature and to be a tiny bit better than that.
I mean, I'm always talking about natural law and what what is nature, which is balance, and I feel like it's really like what we've been conditioned into. It isn't really in our nature because nature is balanced, and what we have is a complete lack of balance and a complete destruction of how nature works in our society. And so I feel like we need to condition ourselves to be and work, getting in touch with exactly how, or at least closer to the way that nature works.
Well, that's absolutely true. And what's interesting to me is I go on these channels like Fox or MSNBC, and I always have these folks coming at me going, well, can you please justify yourself? No, I'm not going to justify myself, because the point of my life, the point of my work, the thing that I do is try to explain that everybody doesn't know everybody else's side. And it's probably best if we go in assuming we're not the smartest people in the room.
I mean, if people, I was just talking with a friend who's staying over and telling them that what is wrong with the society that we're living in today is the elimination of nature. And if we could just incorporate a little bit more of nature's process into everything that we do, which is, slowing down, getting to know people, taking the time, just incorporating nature's process, being more in the present moment instead of always looking to get something out of somebody or get somewhere. Like, that's what's missing, is nature's process is being literally eliminated from everything that's being done. The removal of due process and just no trial, and just, killing people, dropping drones on them, keeping them in Guantanamo, indefinite detention, no rights to, no giving anybody their rights. And so that is just more and more eliminating nature's process out of everything, which is how the corporations fund everything. And the bottom line is just, getting to the monetary part of it.
Yeah, and I think that that's true.
So how did you come to write the book? To just talk a little bit about your experience and your life with IHOP.
Yeah. No, I've worked in restaurants and bars in the service industry for most of my adult life. I wrote a thing about it on the internet, and it went super, super viral. And then they asked me to write a book, and that was really that simple. It was overnight.
Who's they? Who's they?
Penguin Publishing. And the book came out with Penguin in the fall of 2014. And I've been very, very lucky to kind of travel the world, really, and talk to a lot of folks about what it means to be working class and what it means in this new globalized society to be doing an analog job where, people that are working in the service industry, what China's stock market doesn't really affect them.
And so you're on your way to go give a talk now too in Minneapolis?
I know Minneapolis is a stopover. I'm actually on my way to New York City to address the Institute of Child Family Homelessness.
And so is that going to be this evening?
That's going to be on, I think, Friday evening.
Oh, maybe I'll come.
You'd be more than welcome.
That's where I am, in New York.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah, I'm in the party on Thursday night.
Okay, so where is it going to be again, and what time?
I can send you those details. I don't know them off the top of my head.
Okay, and I'll if you send it to me before the live show ends at 8 p.m., then I'll announce it on the radio later.
Sure thing.
And so a lot of people have been asking you to come and talk about and you're getting like a good response from people.
Yeah, well, there's a growing hunger to see folks like us represented, because what we often see is rich people talking about what it must be like to be working class. We very rarely see working class folks elevated to a position where they've got a platform to talk about what it actually is like to be working class. And so I think a fair bit of my audience and a fair bit of the work that I've been able to do over the last couple of years is because I'm not wondering and pretending what it might be like to work at IHOP until 2 o'clock in the morning. I did that for a decade.
And what is it? Can you talk a little bit about what you wrote about working in IHOP and in the restaurant industry?
Yeah, what I said was you're not allowed to call somebody on food stamps lazy, because nobody that has 3 jobs is lazy. That's not what words mean. You're not allowed to decide based on 30 seconds of seeing somebody else's economic situation what their moral or social logic is. You're not allowed to judge a fellow human being simply because they're not one of the very, very few that have made anything work in this economy. When you've got more people than you have jobs, you don't get to blame the unemployed for being lazy, or to say that they're somehow morally less worth the people who manage to get the jobs. When you've got an education system that doesn't train citizens in history and civics and math and anything like that, then you don't get to complain that they're uneducated, and you don't get to blame them for their own lack of education. You do not get to create a situation that's set up for millions of Americans to lose and then turn around and point your finger at them and say, this is your fault. What are you going to do about it? Exactly. I point the finger back. I say, no, this is your fault. What are you going to do about it? Because you know what? I'm too damn busy holding down 3 jobs to figure out the broader economy. That's the job of those who make the money.
And what you again were just describing is what keeps this vicious cycle going. Why don't those people who are doing all the finger pointing of the working people, the working poor, and take those fingers and go point them up at the the real criminals, that are completely like the untouchables, because that's too difficult, that's too challenging to do, so people just turn around.
And there's no reward in it. There's no reward in it. There's no reward for somebody in the upper middle class to go and fight on behalf of the working poor to the very rich, because what's going to happen is those middle class folks are going to be made very poor. It is in the interest of those that hold power in this country to keep the balance where it is.
And I'm always believing that it's not the 1% per se that are necessarily the problem. I'm always putting the blame on the people, because it's the people that work for the criminal 1% and then turn, like they're the ones that turn on the vulnerable and make the poor. This system makes people poor and then turns around and blames them for being poor.
Yeah, but you can't blame an individual wealthy person for the system being what it is any more than you can blame an individual poor person for poverty. That's not how it works. This is a societal problem, and it's going to need a societal solution.
And what is that solution?
Well, beyond everybody in the human race suddenly being better, I'm not sure. What I do know is that we could pass a few laws, we could tweak a few things, we could check a lot of power. And we can do those things. We're not going to solve people in power being addicted to it. We're not going to solve wealthy people jacking over poor people en masse to make a little bit more money. I mean, that's not going to be solved, but we can mitigate it.
And how would you say we could do that?
I mean, things like family leave, things like housing, things like medical care, a decent education system,
Yeah.
and redlining. Prosecute police officers that shoot people extrajudicially without arrest or trial. There are 1,000 easy things we could do.
Exactly. The people definitely need to be rising up and standing up to the people that need to be stood up to, instead of turning around and blaming the people being completely victimized by the system.
Never blame the oppressed for their own oppression.
Exactly. I mean, that's one good way to turn the vicious cycle around. I was wondering if you were able to possibly meet Barbara Ehrenreich.
She wrote the foreword to my book. She's lovely.
Oh yeah, okay. Like, she's another person I'm kind of dying to interview. So if you could put in the good word,
Absolutely.
Yeah. So is there, how do people find your blog or?
You can find me on Twitter at Killer Martini. That's mostly where I do my social media. Occasionally, when I can, I post to bootstrapindustries.com.
Oh, can you say the Twitter name again?
Killer Martini.
Oh, okay. Is that what you make, a killer martini? I could use one.
Lots of years in bars, honey. Lots of years in bars.
So maybe we'll have one on Friday night after your talk or something.
Happy to do it.
Okay, so this is Linda Tirado, who wrote... Oh, sorry.
Hand them out. Living in Bootstrap America.
Thank you so much, and keep up the good work.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me on.
Okay, you're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye.